Hello, 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 everyone. I am Valerie Valdes, author of Chilling Effect. Please enjoy my cats. My actual cats may be making an appearance. They have been skulking around the living room, which is where I am broadcasting from, because it has a much better Wi-Fi connectivity than any other room in my house. So I hope that you all enjoy what we're about to bring you. Just to talk a little bit about myself, I am a Cuban American author. I was born in the great state of California, but spent most of my life in Miami, Florida, among many other Cuban Americans. So, and of course, Cubans and lots of other folks. But here I am. And if you have any questions, I guess put them in the chat, put them in a comment. I'll be happy to answer them. And otherwise, in about 4 minutes, I'll get started with the actual reading portion. Otherwise, I'm going to sit here and hope that my cats don't crash this video too profoundly. And otherwise, just kind of make a fool of myself right now. So Chilling Effect is a book about Captain Eva Inocente. She is a Cuban-descended starship captain who has her own ship. She and her crew wander the galaxy, taking small jobs, mostly cargo stuff, sometimes passenger transport, and basically making ends meet as you do in the far future of the universe. This is the kind of universe that has gates that facilitate universal travel. You are able to get from one end to the other pretty quickly. And so it's a little bit of a hand-wavium there in terms of the FTL if you're a hard sci-fi fan, but facilitates plot and character activities. Why was the cat scene cut for the next book? So I had recently posted a cat scene on my blog it was actually cut from the first book. It's because it was the only scene that was not in a close third-person POV. It's shifted from Eva Inocente's POV to the POV of some other characters, including the cats that you will meet momentarily as soon as I start the reading. And so once you've read the book, if you feel like delving into that particular scene, it's got psychic cats, it's got robots, and that one is just a very short little excerpt. It's fun. But the cats are a challenge. I've already got one down here who's trying to decide if he's going to join me up on the up. Here he comes. This is Wash. Probably not psychic. Unless you count just the generalized way that cats tend to be psychic. My other cat, Inara, yes, they are both named after Firefly characters. She is skulking about the living room, as previously noted. I'm also wearing my cat astronaut shirt, because who doesn't love cats in space? Cats don't. Cats hate being in space. I learned this recently watching a video of a cat in 0G. And let me tell you, it's really sad because, as you may know, cats always land on their feet. So when they're in 0G, it's just a horrifying, constant topsy-turvy spin as the cats attempt to orient themselves downward. Oh, I think, oh no, she hid. Never mind. I thought the other cat was going to join us. But yeah, in about a minute, I'm going to read from the opening of the book. Depending on how long that takes, I also have a horror flash fic from an amazing collection called She Walks in Shadows. It's a Lovecraft compilation by only women authors. And so you can pick up your copy of that. It's also known as Cthulhu's Daughters, I believe, in some places. It got republished, repackaged. So if you want a little bit of Lovecraftian horror in your life, that is a good option. But otherwise, I'll be bringing you some space opera instead. All right. So since it is now 3 o'clock my time, but 8 p.m. over in the British Isles and sundry areas in UTC+1, I'm going to get started with my reading. I apologize if the table moves. I'm trying to keep it steady, but I do have cats, and they are cats. I mean, it's what they do. All right. So this again is Chilling Effect. And so the first chapter is called Save the Cats. If you don't know what that is, it is an allusion to a technique in which you create empathy for your hero by having them immediately do something noble, such as saving a cat from a tree. That's not what happens here. All right. Chapter 1, Save the Cats. Captain Eva Inocente crept down the central corridor of La Sirena Negra, straining to hear the soft rumble of her quarry over the whine of the FTL drive and the creak of space-cold metal. Getting warmer, Min pinged over her comlink. Min would know, since the ship was essentially her second body when she was connected to the piloting interface. But the critter Ava was tracking wouldn't stop moving. It had gone from the cargo bay down below, up through the mess, and was now somewhere between the crew quarters and the head. If it got to the bridge, warmer. A hiss of steam sprayed Ava's hair. Startled, she nearly dropped the vented box she carried onto her foot, juggling it awkwardly before settling it against her hip. She resumed her barefoot tiptoeing with a scowl. Vakar would have to fix that leak later, once the more immediate problem was taken care of. Red hot! Ava crouched, held her breath, and listened. At last, in a gap between two panels, she heard it. A lone kitten, purring. Ava reached in, grabbed it by the scruff of its neck, and dropped it into the box. Got it, she pinged back at Min. 18 down, 2 to go. Her arms were covered in scratches, and her black hair was a mass of tangles from being woken up in a hurry. But on the plus side, she'd gotten pretty good at catching the little mojones. On the minus side, they were only a few hours from their drop point on Letus, and she wouldn't get paid unless she delivered the full cargo. The kitten mewled, and Ava lifted the box to glare at it. Don't start with me, she said. This is the third time you've escaped, and I'm ready to throw you all out the airlock. Green eyes stared her down, the slitted pupils dilating to black discs. And stop trying to hypnotize me, Ava muttered. It's rude. Fucking psychic cats. The cat yowled in reply. Ava carried the box down to the cargo hold. The tall ceiling allowed for multiple stacked containers, with catwalks near the top that had earned their name repeatedly over the past cycle. Metal plates were bolted onto the ship's frame, some hinged to allow access to the guts underneath, with no exposed pipes or wires to break the monotony. A blocky passenger cabin sat in the corner, for the occasions when someone hired them for transportation instead of delivery. Mostly, it transported broken parts Ava hadn't bothered to sell or scrap. Leroy stood in the middle of the room, sweat beading on his upper lip, his curly red hair sticking up at odd angles like it had been licked into place. Since she'd found him on the floor covered in cats earlier, that was to be expected. Ava was almost a half-meter shorter than him, and each of his pale, tattooed arms was thick as a steel beam, but he stiffened into the straight-backed pose of a soldier about to get chewed out as she came closer. I'm sorry, he said. I heard you the last 10 times, relax. His shoulders hunched. I thought maybe just one for a minute. I know, Leroy, they're hypnotic. And you're prone to suggestion, she added silently. One of many unfortunate side effects of his years as a meat puppet soldier, being thrown into whatever corporate war needed warm bodies instead of tactical nukes, controlled remotely by people with an eye in the sky and no skin in the game. Other side effects being anxiety, nightmares, and the kind of sudden, extremely violent outbursts that turned an asset into a liability. Ava knew how those nightmares felt. She was also good at turning liabilities into assets, and Leroy was no exception. He'd been responsible for managing supply chains and tracking inventory when he was deployed, so handling smaller, less frequent cargo logistics came easily to him. She dropped the cat into the spacious, climate-controlled shipping container from whence it had escaped. It had food, water, self-cleaning litter boxes, toys, tiny hammocks, raised platforms on which to run or recline, anything a cat could want, or so the person who designed it had thought. Apparently, what a cat really wanted was freedom. 18 balls of fur sat, or splayed out, or licked their butts, most of them studiously ignoring Ava and Leroy. A few glanced up and blinked languidly, as if they had not been slinking around the ship getting into trouble only minutes earlier. This was what she got for taking on live cargo. If she weren't doing this for her former captain, Tito, and if he weren't paying better than their last 4 jobs combined, that smiling come mierda hadn't told her the critters were genetically engineered, mind-controlling geniuses. It was exactly the kind of casual, not quite lie that had made her quit his crew 7 years earlier, over her father's objections. Given that her father preferred whole-ass lies, and given that he was Tito's boss back then, his opinion had mattered as much as a fart in a hurricane. Fuck 'em both, she thought, not for the first time. Found another one trying to get into a supply cabinet in my med bay. Pink sauntered in, holding a kitten to her chest, rubbing its face absently with one dark finger. Her dreads were tucked under a sleeping cap, and her eye patch was flipped down to cover her cybernetic eye, while her organic one took in Ava's scruffy condition with a raised brow. "You're looking splendid," she said. Ava examined her welt-striped arms. "I look like I wrestled a needle bear." "Are those real?" Leroy asked. "No," Pink said. "Says the lady who hasn't wrestled one," Ava retorted. Pink rolled her eyes. "I'll clean you up and synthesize you some allergy medicine when I'm done making my hormones. How many cats left?" "Just one." Leroy paused for dramatic effect. "The leader." "Cats don't have leaders, honey," Pink said. "Tell that to the leader." Pink may have been right, but Ava knew who Leroy meant. The one who kept busting everyone out was the smallest cat, a calico with mottled brown and black fur with patches of orange, and hazel eyes that looked like they had seen some shit. They probably had. She didn't know what it took to make the kittens more intelligent, but she doubted it was nice. "Viva la revolucion," Ava said, "but not on my ship. Min, can you pinpoint its location?" No response. "Min, can you hear me?" The silence grabbed her stomach and slid it up to her throat. "Bridge, help," her comlink pinged. The limitations of the mind-to-mind communication feature more frustrating than usual at the moment. It was Vakar, who for some reason made the cats nervous. Maybe it was the Quenian's pangolin-like skin, or his twitchy face palp things, or the fact that his smell changed to match his mood. These particular psychic cats probably weren't designed to work with non-human people. "Me cago en la hora que yo nací," she muttered. If the cats had gotten into the bridge, there might be more trouble than low wages. "Leroy, stay here. Pink, with me." Pink shook her head. "I'm not leaving Leroy alone with these babies when we're so close to docking." She punctuated this by placing her kitten in the container and closing the lid firmly, then standing next to Leroy, hand on hip. "Fine. I'm sure Vakar and I can handle one damn cat." Ava stalked out of the cargo bay, back up past the mess and crew quarters and head, past her cabin in the med bay, all the way up to the short hallway that led to the bridge. Min's neural implants, originally meant for controlling repair mechs on her family's solar farm, later used for the bot fights that had earned Min her reputation, let her control and monitor La Sirena Negra from anywhere on the ship, but the pilot still preferred to be near the physical controls. Ava had told Min to ping her if a cat made it inside, and she had assumed the calm silence meant good news. She should have known better. Vakar waited outside the door, smelling like tar. Nervous, Ava's scent translator supplied. He had taken off the gloves he normally wore, and was trying to dig his 4-fingered claws underneath the handle of the emergency door release. "You know your hands are too big," Ava whispered. "What's the situation?" "I tried to reason with the cat," he whispered back. "It ran in and the door locked. I managed to bypass the security protocol, but the manual override engaged. I must say, for creatures without prehensile extremities, these cats are remarkably—" "Later!" She gripped the handle and tugged it out, then twisted it clockwise to disengage the deadbolts. Each unlocking pin made a loud, grinding sound as it moved. "When was the last time you lubricated this?" Ava snapped. "I would have to check my maintenance logs, but I have been rationing lubricant, and this was lower priority than other items." Ava suppressed a joke. Vakar was always so sensible, and it wasn't his fault she'd been denying his requisitions. "On 3, you open the door, and I bust in," she whispered. "Ready?" He shrugged assent. She moved aside and drew her pistol, loaded with tranq rounds for the occasion. Hopefully she wouldn't need them. Hopefully they weren't strong enough to kill a cat. Hopefully she wouldn't miss and hit something that would blow up the ship. Hope in one hand and shit in the other and see which gets full first, she thought. She leaned against the bulkhead next to the door and pinged the countdown silently at Vakar. "On 3. He slid the door open, and she leaped in, scanning the room with her pistol leading. Min lay in the pilot's chair, black eyes open, short dyed blue hair in disarray. Because she was connected to the ship's systems wirelessly, she didn't have to look at the instrument panel in front of her, so her chair was reclined as far back as the small bridge allowed. Where some ships had holographic controls, La Sirena Negra was all old-fashioned buttons and switches and blinking lights, less fancy but cheaper to maintain, and not as prone to sudden catastrophic failure. Above that, the display connected to the 4 hull cameras was turned on, projecting an image of the dizzying streak of stars passing them as they flew through the red-tinged blackness of space. Sitting on the instrument panel, pawing at the manual control override, was the calico cat. It hissed at Ava, hazel eyes flashing. She felt a sudden vertigo, as if the artificial gravity had shifted. Shaking her head to clear it, she leveled her gun at the critter. "Get down from there, you Gabon revolutionary," she said, "before you break something." "The little cuddly poof accidentally blocked my comlink access, Cap." Min spoke through the speakers in the bridge, instead of her human mouth, as usual. Ava snorted. "Accident, sure. You okay?" "Yeah, com's almost back up." "But are you okay?" "A few bites and scratches in random spots, nothing Bakar can't fix." "I meant your—" "Never mind." Ava was going to say real body, but after 4 years, the ship was as much Min's body as the one she'd been born with. The cat crouched, its butt shaking in the air. Then, in a fluid motion, it jumped onto another part of the panel. "Idiot!" Ava hissed. "Get away from there! You'll jettison everything in the cargo hold." It raised a paw, threateningly. "You're seriously going to kill all your little cat buddies. Flush them right out into space." It hesitated and cocked its head at her. "Cap?" Min said. "You're talking to a cat." "I believe it can understand us quite well, Min," Bakar said, peering around the edge of the door. "Right, okay." Ava hunkered down and stared at the cat face to face. "Listen, kitty, I'm taking you to a nice new home somewhere. A cafe where millions of tourists will come every year to pet you and feed you canned meat. I don't even get to eat canned meat." The cat's tail lashed back and forth. "Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's not your idea of a good time." Ava ran a hand through her tangled black hair. "What do you want me to do? Someone is paying me to take you to another planet, and if I don't deliver, I don't get paid. And if I don't get paid, I lose my ship. So pretty please, with sugar on top, get in your cabron crate already, coño!" The bridge was silent for a moment. "That did not sound like a compelling argument," Bakar said. Ava made a disgusted noise and threw her hands in the air. As if in response, the cat leaped onto Min's human lap, where it settled down and began to lick its paw. "Okay, what the hell," Ava said. "Oh, I think it likes me," Min said. She scratched the cat's ears with a pale hand. "Too bad. 20 kittens, cash on delivery. We don't get paid for 19. The cat yawned, showing tiny sharp teeth and a throat pink as a guayaba. "It is arguably cute," Bakar said. "It broke out of its cage, locked itself in the bridge, and tried to take over the nav systems." "Cap, come on. How did it know how to use the nav systems?" Min scratched the cat's chin and made soft cooing noises at it with her human mouth. "Psychically," Ava said. "Mira, cute or not, I want these sinvergüenzas off my ship as soon as we dock. If that cat isn't in its box in the next—" She glanced at Min. "How far are we out from Valdes?" "We'll hit the nearest gate in about an hour, then 2 hours to orbit, plus docking time and customs." "Madre de Dios, I was supposed to call Tito to find out who we're meeting and where." Ava cast one last snarling look at the kitten, which had the goal to wink at her. "I'll be back for you, cat, so don't get comfortable. Bakar, keep an eye on them." She stalked past Bakar, back straight, fighting the urge to scratch her welted arms until they bled. Could one thing go right for her this cycle? Right, so again, chilling effect. I hope you enjoyed that. That was part of Chapter 1, Save the Cats. So the rest of the book is the adventures of Ava and her crew as they attempt to save her sister Mari, who's been kidnapped by an organization called the Fridge. The Fridge goes around kidnapping people and engaging in other sorts of shenanigans. They're kind of like a space mafia doing lots of naughty things. So, and of course Ava has to work secretly because if she tells her crew about what she's doing, then the Fridge might kill her sister. And that would definitely be a problem. I mean, maybe you don't like your sister, but I like mine. So That is the story of that book. The sequel, Prime Deceptions, is coming out in September and follows the continuing adventures of Ava and her crew as they attempt to find a missing scientist who is necessary to some interstellar intrigues. And so there's a lot of galaxy hopping, or universe hopping rather, fun times, new planets, new aliens, and a lot of just kind of interstellar shenanigans. This is, if you liked it, then check it out. Orbit Books in the UK, Harper Voyager in the US, and now I guess I will read from She Walks in Shadows for just a few more minutes. It's a pretty quick story, unless people, I guess, want to hear more from Chilling Effects, but I don't know if there are votes that are allowed to go on for this particular thing. If I keep going in that chapter, for example, I can introduce you to Tito Santiago, who is a particularly special dude. The kind of guy that you just want to punch for reasons. But yeah, I think we'll shift over to this story. Like I said, this is a flash fic. It's a short, funny horror story from She Walks in Shadows, also known as Cthulhu's Daughters, depending on where you're ordering it from. And that is a book of Lovecraft short fiction. So definitely check it out. My story from that is called Shub Niggurath's Witnesses, and I hope you enjoy. I'm reading this one on my phone because technology is fancy. I can't find my book. It's in the garage somewhere in a box because we recently moved. And that's what happens when you move. Things don't get unpacked in a symmetrical fashion. All right, so Shub Niggurath's Witnesses. Sister Honoria and I walked into the cul-de-sac, our skirts sweeping the asphalt, the clapping of our feet like castanets. I had a good feeling that today my sisters and I would bring the word to receptive ears. I fanned myself with one hand while the other held my black umbrella to shade me from the morning sun. There were enough of us that each pair could approach a separate house at the same time. Ours had a dirty white automobile in front and a bougainvillea that was all dry thorns. I saw a crack in the blinds, a pair of fingers. We stepped onto the porch, and Sister Honoria rang the bell. At first, there was no answer. People often pretended not to hear us, or that they were not home. A shadow fell over the peephole, so I knew we were being watched. We waited. The door opened, revealing a young woman wearing a pinstripe suit and a name tag that read, Your Lady's Benitez, in block print. Sorry, senoras, she said with a fake smile. I'm leaving for work. I smiled back at her. We understand. But surely you can spare a moment for the black goat of the woods with 1,000 young. I don't have... Her dark red lip curled. The what? Shub Niggurath, the black... I was politely interrupted by Sister Honoria's cough. I had gone off script in my enthusiasm. Are there mysteries in your life that do not have satisfying answers? Well, I mean... I held up a pamphlet, the cover of which showed a young woman very like your lady's, her chin cupped pensively in her hand, question marks floating around her head. Underneath were bulleted questions, which I gestured to as I spoke. Have you ever felt that no benevolent God watches over you? Her brown eyes narrowed. Sometimes. Do you feel your life is insignificant? That you are a tiny ant in a vast, uncaring universe? I don't know, like maybe... Do you feel you have no real control and could be wiped out at any time by unknown forces more powerful than you can comprehend? She fidgeted and looked over my shoulder, likely at my other sisters. Yeah, sure, whatever. Then you will be happy to know there are answers to your questions if you dare to look. I flipped open the pamphlet. The Magna Mater grants her worshippers the knowledge and power to ensure the propagation of her seed across the cosmos. Her children are the chapters of her ongoing revelation. Her gaze shifted to the paper I held, its signs and sigils squirming from the attention. Is this a joke? Are there, like, cameras or something? Not at all. I offered her the pamphlet. Read this at your leisure. There's a website on the back. Pero, like, what's the point? Sister Honoria chuckled, the sound coming up from deep in her chest like a cough. There is no point to anything. No point at all. That wasn't entirely true, but I wasn't going to contradict her. Okay, sorry, but I really have to go. The woman snatched the pamphlet and closed the door. Sister Honoria and I walked out to the street to join the others. Some were already returning to the forest behind the neighborhood's flimsy wooden fence, with or without victims for the blood sacrifice trailing behind them. Sister Lydia appeared to have eaten another dog, but there was no telling with her. It might have been a cat or a man. Sister, I said, why did you not tell her that Shub-Niggurath grants immortality to her chosen? The gentle clopping of her hooves stopped, and I turned to look back at her. She watched as the woman climbed into her car and drove away, narrowly avoiding a pair of us in her haste. Because, she said, the wife of the not-to-be-named one owes us nothing. We exist to serve her and her children. Yeah, Shub-Niggurath, I said. Sister Honoria resumed her walk, scratching her horns absently. Besides, not everyone survives the ritual to become a coffin hupagd. Being regurgitated is very uncomfortable. She did take the pamphlet, at least. Indeed, let us continue our ministry until she joins us, or goes mad. The sun disappeared behind a wall of dark gray clouds, bringing with them a storm that quickly soaked through our skirts. We trailed your ladies to her place of employment, an old movie theater in a shopping center, with a bright neon-lit lobby jangling with gaming machines. The projection booth inside was deliciously dark compared to the sunny streets. After a delightful few hours of terrorizing her, making blood-curdling noises, casting eldritch shadows into empty theater houses, revealing to her the true forms of the twin blasphemies and the untranslatable sign, we finally wore her down, and she brutally murdered her supervisor with a conveniently placed umbrella. You had to, of course, I assured her, as we led her out to the woods. Your tender sensibilities can only withstand so much stress under the weight of the vast, ineffable horrors of reality. But, like, what do I do now? She asked, examining her bloody name tag, which read, Your Knight. The only solution is to give yourself to the will of the All-Mother, Sister Honoria said. We soon reached the trees, whose branches tore off our clothes, so we could cavort naked with our sisters in the glorious darkness between tongues of lightning. Your ladies was hesitant at first, but she did love to dance. Soon she was twirling and stomping with the best of us. We even let her keep the umbrella. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. It is just about time for me to sign off. So if anyone has any last questions, I will be happy to take them. Otherwise, I am, once again, Valerie Valdes, author of Chilling Effect and the forthcoming Prime Deceptions. You can find me on Twitter at Valerie Valdes. It's with an S, as you can see probably spelled on the Facebook page. But check out my book. Check out my other book that's coming hopefully in September, barring any kind of publication delays, which as we know are unfortunately happening right now to a lot of folks. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed once again. And please stay tuned because you're going to have a real treat. Adrian Tchaikovsky will be imminently present to read a special sneak preview from his book. So I will sit here marginally uncomfortably for a couple of moments just in case any questions pop up. But otherwise, thank you so much for coming by and I hope you enjoyed the reading. And now I'm scrolling through here. Yeah, Prime Deceptions is up for pre-order right now. And I'm glad your cats were listening. I hope they enjoyed it. I'm very sympathetic to cats and their needs. My cats are possibly a little spoiled, but they don't have any sort of cat trees or anything. They tend to just sit right behind me on the couch as I'm working. This is one of my working spots, among others. I wish I could take you up to my office, but as I said in the beginning, unfortunately the Wi-Fi up there is pretty spotty. But you would get to see my vast array of unpacked books, some quality Transformers, among other exciting statuary. I don't know what you call it, action figures. It's action figures, let's be real. So I also have too many notebooks because I'm a writer, much like every writer that I know. Lots of blank notebooks that I've never tried to write in. I do most things on computers these days. I just get nervous. You ever see that blank page and you just start freaking out? That's basically me. All right. So thanks again. I'm going to be shutting this down now. If you have any other questions, hit me up on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, I guess. If you're one of the cool kids that uses that. I don't have TikTok. I don't understand it, but it makes me laugh when I see good videos. So post to TikTok, brighten our days in these tough times. And so that's it for me. Valerie Valdes on Twitter. Please buy my book. Here's my cat. He's come back for one last goodbye. Say goodbye, Wash. He's enjoying this, you can tell. All right, bye everyone. Have a good one.